You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast, coming to you from Montecito, California. And today is not one of our back-to-school shows, but it is kind of like that because it is related to precious metals and that kind of thing. And before I start on that, though, let me remind you of something, which is that there is a website associated with this podcast called wealthformula.com. Not a surprising name for the associated podcast, but that is it. And one of the things that I would like you to consider if you are an accredited investor, which means that you which is not something you have to apply for. It's basically just describes you. You're somebody who makes $200,000 per year or $300,000 a year as a couple for 2 consecutive years with a reasonable expectation to continue doing so, and or you have a net worth of $1 million outside of your personal residence. Now, that alone makes you an accredited investor, and if that is you, consider joining our investor club, which is for deal flow, because we're about to hit the ground running here. We're about to do some deals, and it's been a while, but we are about to do some deals. And I think it's a great time for you to get onboarded before that. So once you go to wealthformula.com, you sign up for Investor Club, you get onboarded by our group, and then you can check out some of the potential things that we are looking at as a group. Okay? Check that out, wealthformula.com. Now, okay, so today's show is about silver. Now, those of you who know me, who've listened to me for a long time, know that I'm not really a precious metals guy. I mean, I know the arguments, and I respect them. Gold has held its price over an unprecedented amount of time. An ounce of gold got a guy a nice toga and sandals in Roman times, and today it'll get you a nice suit and a pair of shoes. I get it. In that regard, gold has been the ultimate hedge. And if you're looking for wealth preservation over 1,000 years, then there you go. Just buy some gold, right? Because, your real estate's not going to last 1,000 years. But do you need it to last 1,000 years? I'm not so sure about that. But I will tell you that argument is what people selling gold will tell you. And they aren't lying. But there's often an element of fear-mongering involved in that world that I find a little distasteful. Now, the thing I really don't like about gold is that it is an asset that doesn't throw off any money. And if you are storing it somewhere, it's going to cost you money to do so. Kind of like real estate that has negative cash flow, right? Unleveraged real estate with negative cash flow. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And with negative cash flow, leverage doesn't make sense either. Not like it's available on gold anyway. So I guess my perspective, and again, it's my perspective. There's people who disagree, and a lot of gold bugs are very, very fanatical. So, I have to watch my back when I say stuff like that. But my perspective is that if you want a real asset that is hedged against the dollar and keeps up with inflation, why not buy real estate instead? In fact, if you don't put any leverage on the real estate, which, for me, if I can have leverage, I'm going to take the leverage. But if you don't want it, it's pretty much behaving like gold, but also giving you an income as well, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, remember Dante Andrade and I, my partner on Turo, we're seeing properties, for our own portfolio, and we were seeing properties being sold for $30-40 million in cash, and they were being bought by Chinese. For cash, just, no leverage whatsoever. They're just going to plop it down and just wire you the money, and what were they doing? They were essentially buying a storage of value outside of China. That's what they were doing. And that kind of sounds like gold, right? Except the real estate cash flowed. Now, anyway, today, I'm not anti-gold by any means. I'm just not a gold bug. And that gets gold bugs riled up. And hey, all I'm going to say is convince me. I have an open mind. I keep interviewing people who are gold people. As for other precious metals, well, they often have more utility than gold. So that certainly is an appealing quality. Silver, for example, used in several industries, several applications. And in that sense, there may be some additional value there that could lead to price increases in the future. So I'm certainly not an expert in this area. And so I just have my big picture perspective on this. And listen, I'm not alone, obviously. Warren Buffett never buys gold, and I'm certainly not as smart as Warren Buffett, but I get the idea. He doesn't buy gold because, again, he doesn't look at it as something that is actually producing anything, so he doesn't buy it, right? And I know some people are going to say, well, he did buy some gold mine companies or something like that. I think he was buying some royalty companies, basically, is what he was doing. That's totally different. Like, he's monetizing the business of gold mining. Anyway, so I'm not an expert, but that being said, personal finance is personal, and you should hear the arguments for all types of assets and make your own decision. So my guest on this week is actually an expert on silver. Makes a pretty interesting case for why you might want to add some to your portfolio. And the truth be told, I do own a little bit of silver. It sounds kind of silly, but when I first kind of got into this alternative asset space, somebody scared me into buying a monster box. It's like this big box of silver dollars in case of the zombie apocalypse, because everybody knows that zombies take only silver dollars. But anyway, I am just kidding. Okay, I'm not making fun of people. Kind of, maybe I am. But there is a compelling story behind silver, and you should know it. So make sure you tune in, and we'll have that interview right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest on Wealth Formula Podcast is Mike DiRienzo. Mike is Executive Director and Secretary of the Silver Institute, which is a nonprofit international association that draws its membership from across the breadth of the silver industry, including silver mining houses, refiners, bullion suppliers, manufacturers of silver products, and wholesalers of silver investment products. It was established in 1971. The Institute serves as the industry's voice in increasing public understanding of many uses and values of silver. Mike, welcome to Wealth Formula Podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so it's good to talk a little bit about silver because the noise is usually in the direction of gold and what's happening with gold, and silver seems to be sort of the redheaded stepchild when it comes to precious metals. But how do you, as a silver guy, I guess, how do you differentiate silver from other precious metals?
Sure. Well, I mean, silver is unique in the fact that it's both an industrial and a precious metal. So you'll find no metal that has that other quality, both those qualities. So over 50% of silver is used in industry. And we do have the investment and the precious component as well. So yeah, while silver is not gold, many people invest in silver purely for its industrial uses and the fact that it's in so many products and applications that we use every day.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about those products and things that I think a lot of people don't know that, right? That there's applications for silver. So give us some examples of everyday things that we use that involve silver.
Sure. So essentially, if it has an on and off switch, silver is involved. So it's the greatest conductor of electricity in terms of metals. Mm-hmm. It's the greatest thermal conductor of electricity. It has properties that are used in almost every application that you're looking at today. So your computers, your cell phones, your light switches, your automobiles, your white goods, your refrigerators, and washing machines and dryers and so forth. So it literally surrounds you in your day-to-day life. And if you look at the number of ounces that were consumed in silver last year, we had well over 500 million ounces of silver were incorporated into industrial uses. So that's essentially half the market. So we had a little over 1 billion ounces of supply, 1 billion ounces of demand. Most of that went to industrial demand.
Got it. And it sounds like there's another potential growing use of silver when it comes to this area of renewable energy. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important point. And the fact of the matter is that people talk about other metals and so forth. And, let's take, for example, copper. Copper has been described as the superhighway to decarbonization. Well, silver is the glue. So if you don't have silver, the copper is not going to work. I mean, the copper can work in certain circumstances, but silver really is the glue. So you look at silver's use in photovoltaics, which has grown exponentially over the last decade. You look at silver's use in clean energy, vehicles, for example, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. We're looking at over 100 million ounces of silver being used in the automotive industry by 2025. And quite frankly, these are numbers that were just not there 10 years ago, right?
Right.
Especially in photovoltaics. And I would encourage your users to go to our website at silverinstitute.org and download for free our latest World Silver Survey, where you get a complete breakdown of those numbers.
Talk a little bit about, in terms of comparisons to gold. Again, the gold has always been sort of seen as a hedge against inflation. Presumably, silver offers a similar role, although it may actually, in some respects, I think if I think about it in practical terms, I would think it would even be a better hedge, because if there's a growing need for it as well, along with sort of this idea, the way that gold, gold is money. Is silver money?
Silver is money. Silver is money and across the globe. I mean, if you were to buy an American Eagle coin today, it has a face value. Okay, there's a price involved. Now, would you want to take a $50 gold coin and buy $36 worth of groceries, or a $10 silver coin and buy $5 worth of groceries? No, but it's legal tender. You can use it. So a lot of people do stack their portfolios with 2, 5, maybe even more of a percentage with gold and silver, hard assets, not Bitcoin, not some of these other dreamscape commodities that have just been dreamt up in the last few years, but hard assets, gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, all right? So people do diversify their portfolios with those. Now, that's not to say that these cryptocurrencies haven't made a dent in the speculative market for gold and silver. They have. I mean, I don't think we know exactly where that's going to end up. I mean, every day I read about the malfeasance and the lawsuits and the stolen wallets and so forth. You don't get that with physical gold and silver. Okay, you just don't get that. But back to your original question, is silver a store of value? It is. It's been one for over 3,000 plus years.
And is it historically, does it act in the same way as a hedge as gold, or is there anything that's different about it?
Well, I think I can make the argument that gold has not corresponded with an inflation concern this time around as it would have in the 1970s or the early 1980s. Quite frankly, it's just not behaving in the way it did a generation ago. So, and silver is following suit. I mean, we're looking at an average price of silver for 2023 so far through the first 6 months of about $23.80. All right. And there are people out there that argue that the price should be triple digits, so $100+ silver. And there are others that say that it's a $5 metal. I think if you were to canvass most analysts across the world, they would say that we're kind of in the middle of the range for where we are right now. If you look at the LBMA's annual analyst forecast, for example, I think the average price they pegged for 2023 is about $24, $25, with a top end of 30 and a low of 16. So I know that our producers would appreciate a higher price,
Sure.
but I know at $24 and $25 as we speak today is healthy for them.
Yeah.
But they would appreciate a higher price. Let's put it that way.
So, what is your take on investing in silver in terms of, like, does it have to be hard? Does it actually have to be physical silver? Do you think ETFs are okay? I ask you because, some of the gold people that I've talked to are very adamant that it has to be physical gold. And, so I'm just curious where your take is on that for silver.
Well, I mean, there are two schools of thoughts here. So people buy coins, they buy bars. They either store them themselves or they have a third-party custodian. You need a third-party custodian for purposes of an IRA account. But there are many people who like the convenience of an ETP, so an exchange-traded product, which only came on the market in 2006. So they're less than 20 years old. And that provided the convenience of an investor getting in and getting out of that investment on their own trading platforms or through a broker, much in the same way they do any other mutual fund or any equity that they may own. That silver is backed up, by the way, with physical silver in vaults that are run by custodians. Most of those vaults are in London, some are in the United States, but it's not a fake paper trade. There is actual silver there to back it up, as there is with gold.
I want to understand a little bit about, first of all, like how is silver mined exactly? I mean, is it just like gold mines? I mean, but they're silver? Or maybe that's a silly question, but I have no idea.
Sure. So it's not a silly question because silver is unique in the fact that only 30% of silver that comes from a mined source comes from what's known as a primary silver mine. So that's a mine that has 51% silver in the ore body. Typically, 70% comes to the market from other mining activities. So it's lead and zinc, gold, and copper mining. And so if they're mining for gold, copper, or lead and zinc. They get a silver credit because silver is credited in the doré. And when they send it off to the refiner, they'll get credit for all those metals. But only 70%, only 30% comes from what's known as a primary silver mine. And it's interesting to note that the silver mine supply over the last 2 years has decreased by about 5%. We're thinking there's going to be a small increase this year because of some projects that were sort of waylaid during COVID are coming back online.
Are the industrial uses of silver, do those allow for a recycling of the metal?
Oh, absolutely. When you look at scrap supply of silver, that was about, over 200 million ounces last year of scrap coming back to the market. The problem with silver and recycling, if it's not jewelry or if it's not coins, it's kind of hard and almost financially disadvantaged. It's not your advantage to take the silver out of the metal, but there are people are. So if you look at cell phone recovery of all metals, copper, gold, and silver, it's very, very strong. So it does happen. The problem with some of the smaller amounts of these metals in these applications is just harder to extract.
Got it. And so when keeping that in mind, I guess the fact that it's kind of harder to extract and the current state of mining, where are we in terms of the supply and demand of silver now, and where do you kind of anticipate that, in the next, say, decade or so?
Yeah, so for the last 2 years, we've had a deficit in the market with respect to supply and demand. It's about 130 million ounces in 2021. 2022, it was over 230 million ounces. And this year, we sort of project that it'll be around 140 million ounce deficit. Now, That deficit is widely made up by above ground stocks. Okay, so it's not going to affect the market to the point where it have an immediate effect. But the fact of the matter is this is a trend. We've never witnessed this trend before, and the trend line is pointing to continued deficits even through 2025 and 2026.
Yeah, and do you see, and how about beyond that? I'm just curious, if you look at sort of technology and all that, do you anticipate a growing demand for silver? I mean, let's put it this way, is there competition that you foresee in the applications that are there now that somebody looking in this space might wonder about?
Well, there's always competition and there's always thrifting, right? An engineer, a manufacturer would rather use a less expensive metal. The problem with that, though, is that when you're looking at those other metals, they don't get the excellence and the quality of silver. So if you take solar panels, for example, solar panels, one side is coated with the silver powder paste, and it stores the heat that's later turned into electricity and so forth. And while they have tried to use other metals, and in some cases they've been somewhat successful, the manufacturers have come to learn that it doesn't have the longevity in a solar farm or, for example, in a private residence. So silver will be there. The question is, will they continue to reduce silver loadings? Probably. But will the installations of solar panels increase throughout the world? Absolutely.
Where is most of the silver? I mean, is it what continent or country sort of dominates this space?
It's typically you'll find it's in Mexico, and then Peru, and then China. Those are the top three countries with respect to silver supply.
Got it. I'm just curious, and again, this is just going back to the gold comparisons. When you look at those prices, regardless of how they've come up and come down together over time, why is silver so much cheaper than gold?
There's more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of it is this is less rare.
Right.
And that's true of almost anything we buy, right?
Of course.
You could go buy an $11,000 car, or you can go buy a $100,000 BMW electric vehicle.
Right.
Not to say that there's less BMWs at that price level. I mean, it comes down to consumer choice and so forth. But silver has traditionally been a lower price metal through history.
Yeah, no, historically too, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, this is not my space, but there's been typically sort of a ratio, right? A gold to silver ratio, and what is that typically?
So what the gold silver ratio is how many ounces of silver does it take to equal the current price of gold? So I don't know what that figure is today, but we're at about $24, $25 silver, and I think we're at about
2100.
Sorry, 1900 gold, 19 and change, 1971. So you just have to divide 1970 by 2490, and you'll get that current ratio. Right. And a lot of investors pay attention to that ratio. Yeah. And what they're looking for, if they're on the silver side, is a lower ratio.
Yeah, sure.
70s, lower 80s, 60s. But right now, it's rather high.
It's rather high. Got it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do over there at the Silver Institute. Sure.
So as you mentioned, we started in 1971. I wasn't there then or here then, but over 50 years, we're a marketing agent for silver. So we talk about all of its qualities, all of its uses. We put out reports on silver. Many consider our annual World Silver Survey to be the Bible of the industry. That's widely quoted year in, year out, widely referenced by journalists, analysts, government officials, and so forth. We have a team of 30 plus people that we hire at Metals Focus in 7 countries to get this data. And the difference between that data and other data that you see is this is on the ground interviews and meetings and conference attendance with the miners, with the end users, with the refiners, with the traders, getting a complete full sense of that market. So we're very comfortable with that report, but we also put out other information. We have a free bi-monthly silver news, which contains interesting stories on silver. Could be on silver and the latest health application for silver. It could be on the latest manufacturing issue that incorporates silver. So that's a bi-monthly publication. You can sign up for that for free. All of our publications are available at no cost in PDF format. We put on conferences. We attend conferences. I'll be speaking this year at probably, if you look at the webinars and podcasts, well over 30 events, and that includes live events overseas and domestically as well. So our members are the leading mining companies, as you mentioned, and also the refiners, end users, and our survey sponsors also include those that trade silver, so the various leading banks that trade silver.
Well, good stuff, Mike. It's something that I think that people sometimes ignore. I think it's a good idea to get educated on it. And
I appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate your time. And I encourage your users also to follow us on Twitter at Silver Institute. We put out 1 or 2 tweets a week on various aspects of silver. And we talk about everything from solar demand to did you know that the World Cup trophies are made of silver, or that the World Series trophy is made of silver, or that the Vince Lombardi trophy is made of silver, or the Wimbledon trophies are made of silver, or the Major League Baseball. And so our tagline is silver is actually for champions, not gold.
That's funny. Okay, well, a little healthy, little controversy there, but good enough. Again, the website is silverinstitute.org. Also, people want to go and learn a little bit more about that. Mike, thanks again for joining us on Wealth Formula Podcast.
Appreciate it.
Be right back.
I really appreciate your time. Absolutely. Thank you.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, I am not anti-gold. I am not anti-silver or precious metals or anything like that. This is stuff that you should know about. And I guess at the end of the day, it just comes down to listening what people have to say about every one of these asset classes and making your personal financial decisions personally. Stay tuned for another episode of Wealth Formula Podcast this week, because we are in this special back to school mode. So we're going all in. That show, as long as it doesn't somehow explode between now and then, is related to estate planning, and there's no guest. It's me just going on an estate planning rant, which you should definitely listen to, because I'm basically distilling everything I know about it. And of course, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not, whatever else qualifications you need, but I've looked into this a lot, so it might be of interest to you as I go on my solo rant. That's it for me this episode, though. This is Buck Joffrey with Wealth Formula Podcast signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.